Number one, why do I want to involve myself in discussing Tantra is there are two types of reasons. Western study of Tantra. I'm in the West and I understand Western academic parameters, but Western studies of Tantra has a different history than other fields of Indology. In the West, the first Westerner to study Tantra was John Woodruff. I mean, we can go historically to some insignificant or less significant figures. But John Woodruff was the first, an outsider trying to see, understand, but then he deeply loved and he became an insider. I trust the judgment of John Woodruff more than I trust the so-called gurus these days. Why? It's not about the skin tone. When we start learning something, we cross the boundaries of cultures. And what we are studying does not always remain outside of us. It changes us. When you read poetry all the time, you get tempted to write some poems because it comes to touch your heart. Let me give you another name, Agyahananda Bharati. Agyahananda Bharati, likewise, was one Westerner who went to India and then he just got shocked, surprised, overwhelmed, and then started practicing. I mean, practicing to the extent that sometimes I would be scared, like I'm like, oh my gosh, that is going too far. I would not try those things, kind of practicing. And then came to the West, I think in Washington University in Seattle, he taught and gave many talks in academia. David Kinsley is another name who has written on Mahavidyas. Amazing guy, a great scholar who passed away. I was not fortunate enough to come when he was still alive, but he was like that. And I can continue giving the names of but they are all dead people. We want the living ones. So I can give you some names like Paul Mueller Ortega, who is, one of the known scholars in the field of Tantra, but also fully initiated practitioner in Siddha Yoga. Douglas Brooks, who went to South India, did his field work on Tripura Sundari, and then also became a practitioner, and he is teaching at Rochester University, and he also gives private lectures, and he runs. So there are many people like that type who have transcended the boundary of the East and the West. That is one reason. And why I think that it is better for me to involve myself a little bit in the journey of Tantra. And the second point is because Tantra is such a discipline that invites some kind of personal touch. It is like a I don't like the musicologists, coming and lecturing on music or music history, who don't like to, touch any musical instruments. It just doesn't feel great. Or, all the people, in the art department who talk about art, but don't know anything about art, like can't draw a single thing. That's kind of, that's great. I don't want to diminish others' knowledge, but that's just like the main thing is missing. It's like I invite you guys for dinner and then I offer you different menus, and then I let you choose which food you would like to talk about. I know, I don't know. You would love that dinner party much because that's not what people are invited for supper. People want food. People don't want just to talk about the menu. Or if I give you the history of when the menu was written, and all this, why do we need that? So Tantra has something about personal transformation, personal experience. About myself, again, because I come from Nepal, and many people think that because people around there practice, so it's kind of common for them. Actually not. Tantra is a very rare discipline, and only very few people do actually take it to practice, and some take it to far extreme. And so it's like how to find a balance. And so there is no real cultural insider. My father introduced me to Tantra first, without telling Tantra. I learned many mantras with my father. And then when I was 16, I met two of the most important persons in my life. They both taught me. One taught me philosophy, one taught me practices. So the guy who taught me practices always encouraged me to go and learn philosophy. But the guy who taught me philosophy thought that maybe I was wasting too much time with practices. He didn't reject it, but he thought I could be a better philosopher without mixing that much of practice. But in the long run, I am glad that I had two types of mentors in my life who trained me for decades. And my journey to Benares was only to extend what I was learning in Nepal. And that's all I have done in the West, is basically how to bring some of these ideas. And why I think, number one, I have already rejected the category of the East and the West and Tantra, non-Tantra, because these are social categories. Social categories are created for social governance. It's like a division, and then they make us think that I am a Westerner or you are an Indian, but there's some good ideas. I always tell my students, let's say, I don't know where sandwiches come from, but let us say you are offered a bad sandwich and then a really amazing Thai food. Do you just say, okay, because I'm an American, I prefer sandwich over, no matter how bad that is, over a good, amazing, I love Thai food, that's why, So, and I don't care if Nepalese people are offended when I say I prefer Thai food, I prefer 90% of the time Thai food over Nepalese food. That's what I am. So we live in a cosmopolitan society where all the old structures are dismantled, and we need to learn anything that is good from whatever the culture it is coming from. And we need to not learn, or we need to unlearn things that we do not see valuable. But then I have already spoken so much about the peripheries, but what is valuable for us or relevant for us to learn from Tantra? So that is where I'll give you just a couple pointers. And why just the pointers and not the intense Tantra? Number one, in 1 hour, I can't go too far. But another thing is, you guys are so brilliant. If you want to read it, you'll go and Google and read everything. My job is like, when I want to give you everything, you don't take it. When I want to say why you should learn these things, then if you feel like it, then you'll learn a lot on your own. And that is how I got that insight. I'm sorry, I'm apologizing here, because I got this great revelation. That was one of the gifts of this Corona. I never, ever wanted to teach online. When my university asked, they could give me incentive money, for if I were to teach online, I rejected, because I'm an old school. And I like to really train students, to teach them like in front and look at their eyes and see if they are fully listening to me, if they are 100% with me. And, and then Then one thing good, I mean, there are many bad things, but one thing good is even if it is not the same, but there are many ways to inspire students, and the learning is possible in so many different ways. And I just have to say that I was wrong thinking we cannot teach online or long distance and things like that. So let me go to a couple of pointers now then.
Yeah, they're not yet introduced to Tantra as such.
Okay,
sure. Done yoga.
Okay.
So you're the first one to introduce.
Okay, yeah, okay. What is Tantra then? Tantra is broadly a discipline coming from, South Asia. It is broadly Nepal, Sri Lanka, modern day Pakistan, maybe even some parts of Afghanistan, that whole region, modern day Bangladesh, so that whole area. One time, there are like 92 agama, the original text, like the in Christianity, like Bible. Like if you have the one Bible, then you can think of like 92 similar Bible type texts. That is what broadly those texts are called Tantra. But when we think of Tantra, mostly people don't think about the books. People think about the mantras. And I know I need to tell you what mantras are. People think of the mantras and the mandalas, meaning the geometric designs, and the visualization of Kundalini, that there is some kind of energy in each and every one of you, a serpentine force, some kind of inner energy that needs to be rekindled. And that phonemes have powers, something like the sound frequencies, vibrations, they have powers, energies that work in our psychophysical, like in the subtle levels that can change our thinking. Nowadays, you would say that neural synapses, because nowadays we like to talk about the brain and the functioning of the brain. But what they were saying in those days is like you can completely change your personality by a repeated sonic frequency. That is what called mantras. Basically, you repeat the same thing again and again. And so you have, there are a couple of words I have not explained, but the mantra and the mandala. And then there are these deities, although the deities are not necessarily unique to tantras, but tantras necessarily make deities very complex. That I could say not exclusive to tantra, but unique to tantra. What is complex? Like, for example, 16-headed goddess, or a goddess with 10 heads or 5 heads, a goddess riding on top of like 5 gods. And the peculiar thing I missed now when I was repeating goddess, goddess, goddess. Now, peculiar thing is Tantra, although there are many types of Tantra, like worshipping the male or the female gods or goddesses, and you can even say androgynies, because there are like half male, half female gods or goddesses, whatever you like to prefer. They are predominantly Shakta. Shakta meaning goddess worshipping. And in that sense, Tantras retain one of the most earliest aspects of worshipping fecundity, worshipping the mother nature, and honoring the aspects of the mother. And in that sense, it is also, for the West, it is counterculture, but in India, in the classical time, it was for the Shakta, the goddess worshipping world, the mainstream to reject the orthodoxy imposed by the religious priest. So one thing last in introducing Tantra, what you may like is Tantric texts kind of mock sometimes, but oftentimes at least don't give a damn about all the orthodoxical rules, caste hierarchies, caste control, gender control, regional control, those kind of things. This is almost like revolutionary in that sense, that they didn't see that those type of dogmatic values were based on the absolute realization, and therefore the agamas, the original texts of tantras, repeatedly assault on those types of orthodoxies. And I'm not saying that Tantra is completely free from orthodoxy either, because, when you guys start revolting in America, you start thinking what is not allowed in America and only reject those categories. And I used to jokingly say that when American young people think of revolution, they think that we need to have free marijuana. So because I come from Nepal, and when I was your age, when we thought of revolution, we thought of dismantling the king, and we did. We thought of bringing democracy, and we did. We thought of ending autocracy, and we did. And we thought of, pluralism in society, and at least in constitution, we did. So those were the things meant for us when we were in Nepal. But because you already had so many other things, so I mean, now going back to the point, 1,000 years ago, when people thought of dismantling social structures, they dismantled whatever the structures they thought were necessary, and they overlooked other things, and they were also doomed by their own time. Therefore, I'm not saying that everything they teach is going to fit perfectly for 21st century. But what will fit for our time, that is when, Nalini, if you do me a favor, I will want to give you what are the salient points for you to take and may be relevant. Number one, the idea of freedom. Because the world is, some yoga, if you have heard Vedanta, they think the world is illusion, the world is not real. The Buddha, the world is not real. You can add Buddhist monks about that. And then, or the world is suffering. And so what Tantra did is, the world is your own expression of freedom. Nobody can take your freedom from you, because this is the only built-in nature that makes sentient beings. Even a dog that you have domesticated so much wants freedom. You train him in a particular way, you just try to keep him to wag his tail or do sit and, do whatever you like. But as soon as it gets the opportunity, if you live in the wild or allow it to run free a little bit, it wants to behave as it is. Freedom is the first nature of the sentient beings. We are an expression of freedom. We are not somebody's whim. We are not somebody's mistake. We were not created by anybody. Our being is permanent. And we are in this condition. There is some type of freedom we are still enjoying. But then why are we not enjoying full freedom? That is what they called liberation. Because liberation itself is translated in so many different concepts. The Buddhists have liberation, the Vedantis have liberation. What do Tantrics mean when they talk about liberation? Liberation is an assertion, is an experience of your total freedom. When you know you are free, you are liberated. That's what liberation is. And bondage is to not recognize that you are a free being. Nobody can impose the laws outside of the nature. But then, can I do anything like anarchy then? You know, people misunderstand freedom to anarchy. No, you have the second concept we have is Śaivācārya, one's own inherent nature, intrinsic nature. Every living being is unique. You can almost say every entity in nature is unique, but one thing for sure is there are no two living organisms that can be replaced. They are always unique. Some characteristics we may not know how the monocellular beings have some different tropes within each others, but let us hope science evolves to that level. But they have the capacity, tendency to be unique. And that uniqueness manifests in your Śaivācārya, your own self-expression. And your job is to recognize what is your inherent nature. What do you really, really want? What do you really, really think of doing? And what is a mistake in life is to live somebody else's life. And what is the realization in life is to live your own life. What do I mean by living somebody else's life? I was having a conversation with my friend's mom like a decade ago. She was already 92, but she passed away in a while. She was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. And what did you want to become when you were young? And she said, oh, I wanted to be a diva. I wanted to sing and my family didn't let me. And I had to be a teacher. Oh my gosh, what a shocker. You know, like those early times of 1920s and 30s. Why did you want to do that? I asked. And she said, because those days we had the transistors first. People were listening to radio and we could hear people singing from far afar. And then I loved doing that. And then the question came, is that something you naturally wanted or because you saw someone doing it? No, we see someone doing it and then we think we have to do it. You know, most of the things we do in our life is not because that is what we originally wanted, but because look, he is doing that, she is doing that. You know, like many people, my friends, feel so bad. Oh man, I am not married yet. And you know what? All of my friends are already married, but did you really need to get married or not? I didn't need to get married, but you know, like I feel bad that, you know, I don't fit anywhere. They have these birthday parties for children and all that, and I don't have any of those things. So what is your Śaivācārya, intrinsic nature? But how can we help you tap into your Śaivācārya? That is where the practice of mantra and practice of mandalas come to recognize, first of all, make a journey inward into yourself, to go deep into you, recognize your true nature, and without allowing something to contaminate your sole purpose of being. And you think that there is no sole purpose of being. Let me give you one example. I'm not going to name it, but I know Naliniji personally knows about whom I'm talking. I'm going to tell you a good story, real story. I have a friend who lives in Los Angeles, and he's a very successful software engineer. He has made a goddamn good amount of money. And maybe 8 years ago, when I was having a very good conversation with him, he says, my whole life has been a mistake. Oh my gosh, what are you talking about like that? Why would you say such a horrible thing? He says, you know, we came to America in 1980, and my parents, my dad, you know, like he was, you know, wanted to be a good engineer. And because he told me, I never thought about what I wanted to be. And I joined school and I became an engineer. And now, after working for like 2 decades, I kind of realized that it's not in me. Making money, working in a software company, it's not in me. That's not my nature. I just followed what they told me to do. Is it too late? I'm like, nah. When you are 40, starting life is kind of difficult though, you know. But anyway, he went through some counseling training and he got masters in counseling, and then he goes, you know, does counseling and teaches meditation for the inmates in LA County, you know, like a rehabilitation facility, and he is very happy within himself. So there is one thing to be happy because others cannot think poorly of me. Nah? I have good car, good house, you know, like everything. So others cannot think poorly of me. That is one type of completeness, fullness. But Tantra says, nah, you are only responding to others' concerns, interests. You are not responding to your soul. What does your soul want? And that is how to, but most of you are like, what is he talking about? Like this it's so cheap kind of thing. Like there is like soul talk, you know, we hear all the time. But this is like only when you meditate and go deep, then you will recognize that you have a really inner tendencies within you that are trying to blossom and has been repressed by so many cultural constructs, demands, parental, social, you know, economic, all the restrictions we have. And Tantra tries to, you know, dismantle these restrictions. So we go, you know, there is this Carl Gustav Jung. You guys have maybe heard of this name, Carl Jung. He was an Austrian psychiatrist, worked with Sigmund Freud. Everybody knows the name of Freud, but very few people actually know Jung, you know. Jung had this revelation too, you know, and he actually has a book on Kundalini and the chakras. Very few people actually know that Carl Jung actually wrote a book on Kundalini and the Tantras, because he just went through this journey and practiced, and he just, my gosh, this is real. But you know what, this was, are you kidding? Even today, trying to say that there is something valuable in non-Western culture, we face the cultural conservatives. And those days, like we are talking about, like almost 100 years ago, and then you can only imagine how much of resistance there must have been to, you know, reject these ideas, and therefore many of the things he taught didn't come to popularity. Now, mantra and mandala, because if those are the techniques, I should not keep beating the bush around, and just tell you what these mantras are, and then what the mandalas are. And then, because I want more of a conversation too, that was the premise. I get a little carried away. You have to forgive me. And if I kept a couple more minutes, you have to bear with me. So, what is mantra? Nowadays, you know, mantra is an English word. You can check in any dictionary, Oxford to begin with. And you know, this is a mantra. And they are using in a kind of silly way, like if you believe that is your motto, and they are thinking that as a mantra. The meaning of mantra, the word meaning of mantra is when you reflect upon what is taught there, keep contemplating every day, thinking upon that. And that helps you change. That helps you change. Let me give you a little joke. Almost like 30 years ago, one guy insisted I give him a mantra. I'm like, you know, lightly, I was not taking seriously, but then kept insisting, please, give me mantra. And I'm like, God, please help me. What am I going to teach? And I just came up with the idea, and then just whispered into his ears, very traditionally, one day I have to die. You know, when I gave that mantra, that friend never even spoke with me for like many years. He was very offended because he was looking for some sacred syllable, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. You guys must have seen these Hare Krishna hippies, something like that. You know? And then I'm like, one day I have to die. And then after maybe after a year, I started regretting, maybe I pulled a too big a prank, you know, I shouldn't have done that. But then I was just questioning myself, my judgment. After a decade or so later, you know, how I see persons so much attached to things. Number one, that they cannot have. And number two, what they have earned and how much they want. And then I see that I wish he took that as a mantra, and that would have actually changed his life, because the way he lives right now, you know, he's little older than me. I talked, I don't know, like 3 days ago, you know, and he has these perfect plans. He's now in 72, running, kind of older than me. He's in perfect plan. He has these plans for 30 years of his life after. And then he just purchased a new house in another continent. And then I'm like, when I start thinking, I feel like, and then he got the second brain surgery to remove tumor already. And then 6 months ago, he had a stroke. And then just a few days ago, and now he realizes he has to go through another chemo. Sometimes I get horrified when I see that I was right. You know, sometimes to be right is not right. So this is like, we don't feel gloomy, we all need to die. But what I mean is like, if we kind of take it to the heart, some of these things, maybe our life would be different. But anyway, in the mantra, in Tantric literature, they have these sacred phonemes. All the phonemes. In English, if you have like whatever A to Z alphabets, in Sanskrit, we have 50 alphabets, and those are the common ones. There are other 14 alphabets that are no longer articulated, maybe sometimes, occasionally in some very old Vedic chanting. So there are 64 different phonemes. And a meticulous arrangement of the sonic frequencies from these different phonemes, they saw that can constitute a pattern in your mind-body complex and can alter your way of thinking and your realization. And it can help you transform your personality. And so those are the speeches called mantras. But then there are like many researches now on tapping, like trying to get the graphics of the sonic frequencies, and you know, like almost like reading the pattern when, like the snowflakes, if you guys have seen the pictures of the snowflakes, you know, like you have amazing patterns there. The sonic frequencies create their own amazing patterns there. So we are talking about those kind of patterns. They are called mandala, geometric designs, because every frequency has its own particular pattern. When you combine multiple frequencies and you have complex patterns, and many of these called yantra or mandalas are visualized. Visualize means to see with your mind's eye. It's not like looking at it. Visualizing is to seeing through the eyes of the mind. And you can visualize in your heart, you can visualize up in forehead, you can visualize at the bottom, you can visualize in different parts, you can visualize outside, you can visualize up in the sky. But basically it's imagining. First of all, giving presence to mandala, creating a mandala with the eyes of your mind, like writing, drawing, you know, the whole thing, and then looking at it like a complete picture. And then if possible, then constituting a three-dimensional mandala. And Nalini is the best scholar out there of how the temple architecture is a three-dimensional mandala. So this is the whole history of how the sonic frequencies mantras, which is the mantra is equal to the deity. And you can invoke any deity in any of the physical form. So even this is the statue of this deity should not be worshipped with other. No, it's not like that. In the same center, you invoke so many different deities. And then you have now a complete construction of mandala, and mandala is possible only with multiple deities. The core thing of a mandala is there is always going to be a center and a periphery. A drop at the center, always every mandala, a triangle only, you'll have a center and a periphery. You can't have just a dot and then call a mandala. You can't have just a circle and call a mandala. You will have
you want me to share the screen now?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. So, okay. Oh, fantastic. You can see these mandalas that our sister is sharing with us. Okay.
Let me go through a little bit of everything. So there are some Buddhist ones.
Yeah.
And Śaivism.
Yeah, fantastic.
Architectural and deity-wise. Okay.
Okay. So can you go back to Sri Yantra first? Okay.
Okay.
Like one more and then, oh yeah, this is fine. So in here too, you can see the center and then periphery. And this one has a little complex modern addition to, but I'll explain a little bit to some of these complex, so you can always go back to the simple. The main thing about center and the periphery is, first of all, there is a unity of all the energies, all the forces, shaktis. That is where the center is. And that same energy comes not in entropy, like the modern science is saying, but in some kind of harmony at the end, in the total expression, in the most external periphery. They are always not trying to go towards entropy. They are always trying to find harmony. That is one thing I want you to know. Everybody talks about physics these days, and they all want to say how we fit with science, how this is science and how that is science. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying this is not science, but what I'm saying is the mandala philosophy is not that everything starts from one single event horizon. I can agree to that terminology, and then goes to entropy. And in here, what happens, everything emerges from an event horizon and goes to finding a final harmony. And so there is a chaos in the scattered energy, unrecognized energy, and then the constitutive creative force is always trying to find harmony with all those chaotic energies. So energy is not necessarily positive or negative. Some are harmonizing and some are astray, like a chaotically spreading. So in Sri Yantra, you can see there are 5 down-facing triangles, you can count, and then 4 upper-facing triangles. The triangles that are facing up, we call them fire, because fire goes up. And the triangles that are facing down, we call them water, because water flows down. And I'm sure that you guys know the basic Taoist metaphysics of yin and yang, where yang is fire and yin is water, and yin is dark and yang is day. And so all the polarities, you can think of the triangles facing up and down in the same lines of two types of energies. Just like in Taoism, they are always trying to find a balance. Yin and yang are not, even when they are negating each other, they are still balancing each other. So it is not about yin wiping out yang, or yang wiping out yin. It is not yin as the evil and yang the good. It is not God and the devil, okay? It is about two types of energies wherein one energy is balancing on the basis of another energy. They are occupying each other's space. You see, the space of the fire is occupied by water, and the space for water is occupied by the fire. And the fire is the male and the female is water. I mean, you have to forgive me. Maybe I could change these days because I'm sorry to be so sexist. I find women more hot-headed than the boys, but somehow, and there are more other cooling and heating energies, and then they even went to depicting almost going to basic sexology. Of reading these polarities within two sexes. And no matter what, they are not just talking about sexes, they are talking about the primordial nature and the intrinsic nature of the energies, the ways the energies interact. And their interaction is not about negating each other's, but finding balance or harmonizing each other's. And that is what you find in a mandala. It's a harmony of energies. There are these, one is a static energy, base energy, that is we call Shiva. And then another is dynamic energy, vibrating energy, pulsating energy, we call that Shakti. And Shiva is therefore generally depicted like a corpse because he's like a base, he's like a flat out. His Shiva is called Vyoma Vyapi, means who permeates the sky. And Shakti is called Kali, the ferocious nature of time and energy, so it's like she has this vibrancy, and where can you imagine vibrancy without the placeholder, a foundation, a basis for that vibrancy. Therefore Shiva is the basis wherein Shakti is vibrancy. You are Shiva and Shakti. Now we can go back. If you have another mandala, I am going to skip to 3 and then I maybe go to one
I
more.
can show you the Shiva-Shakti.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah. You can see, Kali. Oh my gosh, look at that. She's the woman, wrathful. Oh my gosh, munchkin. And then she didn't cut the head of her man, though. That is a demon, okay? But you can see Shiva lying down and the goddess is standing on top. And it's kind of reversing the gender kind of metaphor in classical India, always man, kind of sort of, like if you see Vishnu, another god, like his wife is giving him foot massage and he's relaxing. And that is not Tantra. That is like a more Vedic, And in Tantra, they are reversing this. Now, she says, now who is the mama? She's like, I'm the mama. Okay, you down, you boy get down. Okay, so that's a little bit of a very modern woman there, who says, boys, be on your place, okay? Or I'll not be nice to you. And so when boys behave, then she loves them. So that's kind of basic, again, the polarity, but in a philosophical world, I'm just kind of joking, but in a philosophical world, one is the foundation base energy, and that is a static energy, and another is a dynamic energy, vibrancy, and then that is depicted by Kali. So we can skip that too now.
But we also have this as Kali, who is like a mother.
Yeah. And then she's a Durga, and then, when she's happy, and you should not think like she's completely another goddess. Most people think like that. It is the same divine motherly energy that sometimes manifests in that Kali's type energy, and other times like this Durga with the many hands. How may I help you? My little girl, okay, you want some sweets? I can give you some sweets. You are scared, I'll protect you, and then she's just like being available to help. And in any way, it's all the ways we think of the mother. And because ultimately, in the West, at least the existing Western cultures, there is a connection to the divine in the form of the Father, God, the Heavenly Father. And that is already in Judaism, but in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, it's more like a Father-God-centric religions, I would say. Nothing wrong there, but what to do when you have so much of trauma because your father was not a nice person? Sometimes we have a hard time to deal with our actual fathers, physical fathers. And so Tantra provides a different metaphor of the mother, but what to do with the mothers when they are hard to deal with, that is also the case. So then you can, anyway, all these are metaphors, but our deepest connection, both my parents are gone. So if I say that, I don't need to be worried if my father is going to feel offended, but our deepest connection is with the mother. And why is it like that? Is we are connected with the umbilical cord, and we stayed in the womb, and she nurtured us, and she was our food. What I said, we see her breast is the first food we had. And so she didn't just protect us, she gave us life. So there's like, as a father, the job is a little bit distant than the job of the mother, very caring and very close, very intimate. So these tantrics believe that you can be more closely connected to the divine in the feminine form than in the masculine form. Let's skip to next if you have any other, otherwise I can just wrap up.
So here is the same Sri Tantra, but there is also the architectural aspect.
Yeah, you can see this in 3 dimensions. When you are mentally creating the image, first you draw like a 2-dimensional, like a geometric design, drawing like that. And then slowly you kind of, in your mind, you learn how to draw that 3-dimensional structure. And so it's about, and then you learn how to rotate those images. It's just a complex process of, when people say they practice, if they know what to practice, then they are creating an image in their mind. And when the image is created, they are animating it, and they are creating in a 3-dimensional form, and they are rotating it in different forms, and they are installing seed mantras or the phonemes in different parts. And they are now not just installing seed phonemes, they are installing complete deities, divinities in different parts of the mandala, and then ultimately animating the deities. Animating the deities meaning seeing those images as real, like you are having a live conversation. It's a lot of fantasy required, a lot of imagination required, and you need to have like a meticulous training and years of training to be able to refine those imagery in your mind. Let's get out of the image.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So can we now talk about these chakras?
These chakras. Okay. So then, while you have, I talked a lot about the phonemes and also a little bit about the mandalas or geometric designs. In Tantra, these are oftentimes viewed or visualized inside your body. When you see the 6 and then tomorrow you see 4 and some other time you see 9, and then I don't want you to get like which one is correct. All are correct. I mostly teach only 3 chakras. Why? Is because that is easy to begin with rather than 6 or 9 or, you go fancy. So This is the beginning, and they have installed at the base like Lam, the earth, Vam, the water, Ram, the fire, Yam, the air, Hum, the sky, and Om, the energy of the mind. And so from all the elements, you recognize different aspects of your own mind and the psyche, like, she has even written fantasies, fear, love, attention, freedom, setting ego, and gratitude. It's basically a journey. And if you have attended any workshop or her lecture on Kabbalah, then you will know that they have these sephiroths, and these sephiroths are also similar kind of graphs in which they visualize, from the Jewish alphabets, and they install the alphabets, and it's more or less the processes are the same, while in some regards, of course, the breathing techniques and things might be different, but they also apply many of the breathing techniques there. But in essence, these chakras are also the energies of all the elements within your body, and you are recognizing your own harmony, homogeneity through the energies. And all the energies out is in. So one last mantra, or in a sense of the motto, is Pinda Brahmanda. It's a Sanskrit word. Yatha pinde tatha brahmande, yatha brahmande tatha pinde. Look at the very ancient formula, actually. Pinda is the mass, brahmanda is the cosmos, and mass here they meant for the body. As in the body, so in the cosmos. As in the cosmos, so in the body. If you recognize your body, you recognize the cosmos. If you understand all the energies, the forces that are functioning through your body, in your body, there are all the cosmic correlates, and then you will recognize all the energies throughout the cosmos, and you become the totality. And the fundamental problem of the human is being limited, being finite. And fundamental quest for the humanity is to seek to be complete. We all want to be full. We all want to be complete. We all feel fragmented. You go to the bottom of your heart, there is somewhere a little bit of discord. There is somewhere a little bit of, compression, a little bit of feeling incomplete. And so the idea is that as long as you do not recognize yourself as the totality of being and things, you are not going to feel complete. And what happens when you recognize that? You become Shiva, God. You are God. You are not a servant to God. You are servant to God right now to recognize your own God nature. So that is also a little bit radical in Tantra or many of the Oriental systems, that you are not just a whim of a God or a whim of your parents or a mistake. You are actually God yourself. And as long as you do not recognize the divine within yourself, you will feel incomplete in your life. No matter how rich you are, you will be like you may fantasize to be Jeff Bezos, to be complete, but you do not know what is that, Elon Musk, to be complete, or I want to end this thing. I'm going on and on. I used to think that if people are rich, they are going to be satisfied, maybe at one point. And then I met someone, I didn't personally meet, I saw in the news someone very rich. And then I understood that just being rich is not going to make you full. Maybe if you are insanely powerful, like maybe the most powerful person in the world, and then I saw that person actually the most powerful person in the world. And one of the richest person and one of the most powerful person. And then what I saw, the third thing is one of the most miserable person. And then I realized that no, being rich and being powerful is not gonna make you being perfect, happy, satisfied and feel complete. You will still be feeling miserable, and that has to come from your heart. That fulfillment is not ever going to be found from the outside objects, be that money or power. You have to recognize the power within yourself. And that self-recognition is the only thing that will make you feel complete. And that's where I want to stop, because I want to give you guys a little bit time to ask me questions if I have any time left.
Sure. This class goes for 3 hours.
Oh my goodness, I'm not going to stay for
No, don't stay, of course. But we usually give them a break. But they have questions. So,
Okay,
so you don't have to worry about time. Let me stop the share and see if they want any end. Now we open it up for question and answers, and you can either raise your hand or you can, begin with somebody. Sophia?
Yeah, sorry, I'm pulling up my question really quick. Someone else want to go first, and then I can go after that.
Okay, Inka? Yeah,
I can go.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this lecture. Thank you. Like, the Tantra is like completely new to all of us. So so far in this class, we've been learning about like the goal of yoga. And one of the things we've learned is that the ultimate goal of yoga is to transcend suffering on a deeper level. So I just want to know, like, in what ways can like incorporating the aspects of Tantra, like the mandala and the mantra, in what ways can like incorporating these things help us to achieve this goal?
Yeah, there are 3 types of suffering. Of course, the first and foremost is the physical suffering. And the second is our psychological problems. But then the last, we do not count in modern sciences, the suffering is the suffering of a human condition itself. And nobody can help you on that. Let me first explain, therefore, the third type, the suffering of human condition as such. I'm a human and I cannot fly. I mean, I'm not talking about airplane, you know what I mean? I can't have the wings and just fly. When I was a young boy, I just was so convinced that if I run fast enough, then I could just fly. And I need to grow up to realize that that was not going to happen. So that's what I mean by mortality is a human condition, our biological condition. And so they're number one, we need to have a philosophical recognition of what it means to be human. And to come to terms with that, I mean, it is so easy, and you will say, like in America, it goes without saying, you don't need any philosophy to recognize I'm a human, but we know we don't recognize it. We don't accept our death ever. Just like I said, my friend in 72, he just purchased a new house in another continent and he wants to retire after, he married like last time, maybe hopefully like 4 years ago. And then his wife is much younger. He wants to wait for his wife to retire and then after go to that continent, wherever it is, to, spend his retirement life. And he's already having so many physical things. And I'm always tempted to say, how long do you think you are going to be here? It's very rude thing to say that like that, nobody can actually say such thing. So to come to terms with our humanity means accepting our genetic limitations. That is somehow we inherit diseases from our parents also, like diabetes. Accepting our mortality. That is how to come in terms about the things that nobody can do anything about. How to embrace old age, aging. I can't believe that I look like this. Oh my gosh, you know, I used to be so amazing. So how to come to terms with our aging, and so that is also one of the sufferings about which humans are unique, because dogs are not, you know, brooded when in thought. When you see dog is gloomy, you think like maybe he's worried about his old age, or, you know, no, they don't have that problem. We humans have that problem. I was like holding my neighbor's dog who died on my lap. You know, I couldn't stop crying. And she was dying before the death. My neighbor wanted I do some, you know, prayer for her dog. Poor lovely lady, you know, and I'm like, I have to do it for her. And I'm doing my chanting, and the dog is looking at my face, and I feel so crying because she's such a lovely dog. And then she starts crying. This dog starts crying. And you think, oh my gosh, the dog is in pain. The dog knows that she's about to die. No, she's crying because I am crying. You know, how silly of me that the dog is completely free from the you know, this enigma of death. And I am having this enigma of the dog dying. That is how to come to terms with our human limitations. Number two. And number that is the first problem. Instead of putting that the last, I'm putting that the first. Because when we have physical problems, we can't see, like when we lose eyesight or limping or whatever, physical problems, got cancer. Worse than cancer is the human conditioning. And Tantra as a philosophy teaches us about the continuous journey of life. And that is where number one, it will culminate. And then reversely coming to psychological problems, how to deal with our psychology. Many of our psychological issues are built in not recognizing the limitations of my body with other bodies. Other bodies meaning society, other bodies meaning family members, other bodies meaning partners. When I want too much from my partner, or when my partner wants too much from me, and we have problems. When my society demands too much from me, or when I demand too much from society, then we have problem. So many of our mental problems are not recognizing relationships, interrelatedness, and the limitations of how much of we are interlinked, interlocked, and interconnected. Our connections, nexus are broken, and how to keep those ties, nexus alive. That is where we have another problem. And then finally, for the body, our bodies, in mostly, you know, modern science, medical science in particular, is built in the notion of a complete separation of the mind and the body. But Tantra does not think that body is completely separated from the mind. Mind is the most refined, subtle aspect of your body, and body is the most expressed, the manifest form of your mind. Now, with this, you can re-engineer your physicality by mental suggestion. You must have read some stories about the bodybuilder, like, you know, like some people who could never be a bodybuilder, and then, you know, keep telling you can do it, and then end up being bodybuilder. So it's like how the mind comes first in the body too, how we create our body. When you first tell your mind that you can look good only by being this much slim, and then you create your body accordingly. Therefore, your mind creates your body, not always your body creates your mind. So having the capacity of the mind to create your reality, your body. If your mind is so powerful to create your physicality, your mind is also infinitely powerful to create external reality. And the job of Tantra is to embrace it, not in a negative way, but in a positive, constitutive, benevolent, intersubjective way to recognize our innermost power that is divine in us. That's where I'm going to stop. I know you this question, I can go another hour. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Dylan?
I thought Sophia was going to ask.
Yes.
Oh, Sophia, yes.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. So kind of similar to what Inka was talking about, we have like readings that we did, and last night we were reading one just more about Tantra yoga specifically, and like the body and exercises, and just like what I was kind of wondering, like what is like an everyday application of this, like that we can include in our lives. And like I was trying to unpack it and understand it a little bit better, but I was just wondering if you could give a little bit more detail on that.
In everyday practices, number one, you have to have some kind of teacher, because it's like mostly Tantra is not like an intellectual thing as much as like learning economics. It's more like learning swimming or dance. So the first thing is generally, it's very difficult to learn dance alone. I know the dance that I learned taught by nature, but I can't do that anywhere else. I have to close doors and windows, So, but to actually learn what it means to dance, that others also are not offended by seeing, so that is where it's very instructor based. But what goes in those disciplines, three things I can tell you, is like how to create different image and sound. It's not explicitly like the brain hemisphere law, but broadly like the brain hemisphere law, that you have the right and the left brain and processing image and language, and broadly relying on that. When you activate, energize the image process, like and you activate that part, the right part of your brain more effectively. And then when you have particular phonemes, particular mantras repeated, and we can see that your language, your expression will be refined, and then your thought, you are more able to tap onto your thought before they come out. So what will be the consequence? Most likely, if you develop a habit of watching your own thoughts, you also have a likely chance of maybe saying more balancedly, presenting your ideas more organizedly, and maybe not saying something that you are going to regret just after 5 minutes, like, why, how stupid, I made myself such a fool. At the moment, I was so outraged, I said that, but now I just wish I didn't say that. So these are the kind of things that processing the thought. And the mantras, the job of the mantras, you are not just, you say repeat it 100,000 times or whatever, but you are learning to have those repeated thoughts, to watch those repeated thoughts. And then you are watching. Number one, your thoughts are running, and number two, you are watching. So it helps you develop your own aerial view on your mind, and helps you build some kind of inner introspection, inner perception, by means of which you can monitor your own thoughts better and organize them better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Aurora?
Oh, I can see multiple hands now.
Okay. Sienna? Yeah.
I just had a quick question. In your opinion, has like Western culture like adapted to the teachings of like the subtle body and more of a holistic approach to things?
The West is like, it's again very broad thing to talk. It has adapted, or it has adopted properly, or how much it has done, because there is not a homogeneous West. There is not only one West. We have the Hollywood West, We have the hippie West, and we have some real great scholars West, and we have the yogi West. But anyway, in general, it's a learning process. It's a learning curve, and the West is more open to learning new ideas than ever before. And this openness, it's if it stays alive, will help the West to refine what is more effective, what is more efficient, and then filter what is just sold. Now, most of these things are commercialized, and I don't blame the West per se. You know, like when I give free teachings, the only people who have complained to me so far are my own people from my cultural background. It says, you are wasting your time. You could have made so much money. Gee, man. So this is a deep corruption. You know, like to think that we are valuable only when we kind of cash it out, you know, and then there is nothing wrong in, you know, like students paying. I'm not saying that is bad, but what I mean is, what happens then is you have to address the demand of the market. You know, when you have a commodity, you are forced to sell in market price, and then you have to know who your clients are and what they want, and then it's a kind of broadly a process of commodification that ends up being, you know, almost like a spiritual prostitution. I'm sorry to be so grotesque, but it ends up being bereft of the heart of the divine. And so, do I blame the West for that? Not really. I mean, West is an experiment, so is the East, okay? So it's not like everybody trying in the West is like not trying good. And it's not that everybody bringing these spiritual teachings from the East are bringing just authentic teaching for your good. You know, people are people. We all are humans, and with our own limitations. At the heart, we are neither Eastern nor Western. I know there was another question.
Yeah. Okay, Shruti? Yeah.
I know Sienna also had something, but
Sienna? Yeah, go ahead, Sienna.
Okay, hi there. So like some other people were saying, we did some readings last night, and one of them that I wanted to ask about was like the subtle body.
Mm-hmm.
One of the quotes was talking about like non-material to semi-material, like physical body, and then the immaterial mind. Can you just like elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay. So the idea of the subtle body is shared by all the Indic traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Tantra, not Tantra, you know, and they all do not agree to what is meant by the subtle body. Now you can see my problem is like if there are 18 schools of Buddhism and maybe another, I don't know, 120 different schools of Hinduism, and so if they start defining subtle body differently, then it gets really complex or confusing too. But there are some general understandings. I'm going to boil down to what they meant in broadly acceptable terms for all those infinite, like 400 schools maybe. That would be, when you do certain things, it leaves some residue. You hurt someone, you are not just hurting that person, a part of you is also hurt there. When you make someone happy, a part of you becomes happy. It's like a snail trail. We call that samskara, residue, imprints. And subtle body is mostly the imprints of our actions. And is there any physicality in that subtle body, the imprint? I will give you a metaphor of a snail trail I am sure you all have seen the snail trail. When snails kind of go from, some of them are a little gross, but they're just kind of neat animals on their own. And then slimy. That's why we humans have a little bit of a, reservation towards slimy things. So they live behind this slimy, silky, kind of shiny trail. And that is a physical thing, but that's not like the snail itself. Similarly, you leave behind some trace for what you do, and that is left in your mind, mental complex. So there is a little bit of a physicality that is your imprints, impressions of your actions, and that is going to create a tendency. So in childhood, if you are oriented towards particular sports, and you might like to have some tendency towards that, but they do not go for only one lifetime, because if in this life you are a singer, you may keep alive some residue of being a singer, and then another life you are not a singer, you are doing math, but then you like to go sneak in your friend's music class, or some you are a music fan. So it's like we have some tendencies either expressed or dormant, and the subtle body is composed both of the expressed and dormant tendencies left behind by our own actions. And they have some physicality, but they are mostly psychological. Therefore, what they believe is that when we die, that mind and the mental thing constituting subtle body does not die, and it transmigrates, meaning going from one body after another, accumulating more and more of those residue. And the meditation practice or liberation practices help us cleanse those residues. That's what it means. So that's all I'm going to talk about. Shruti, I know you had a question, and then maybe we can, if Nalini says, then we'll stop.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for all the explanations. Like most of my questions answer from the questions asked by Sophia, Yinka, and Sienna. So, but still I have one question. It's like, so whenever I heard this term about Tantra, the one more term comes with it, that is black magic. So is there any connection between these two terms, or what is that? I mean, is it real, or just a kind of imagine or illusion which people talk about? Or there is something which really exists about that?
Maybe, Shruti, you side out to leave behind another essential thing. Whenever you hear of Tantra, I agree with you, you immediately hear black magic. But even equally, maybe if not more, is when you hear Tantra, you also relate to sex. If you Google Tantra, like when I was new to San Diego, and somebody, I have joined the Tantra groups in San Diego. I mean, like, are there Tantra groups? And then I Googled, oh my gosh, just you can Google Tantra group San Diego and you'll know what I mean. So this is why it is happening. Number one, Tantra deals with phonic vibrancies and energies, and the energies are neutral. They are not good or bad. In the sense, it's like the electric currents. You can use it for heating or cooling. You can we cultivate ill and cause something negative outside. Although scientifically it may be a little difficult to prove today, but then we also intend, like sometimes when someone is ill, and then you don't say, I wish him dead, you say, I wish him good health. Why do you wish? I mean, why do you think your wish matters? But, we believe in all cultures that our goodwill matters. So the same way, if someone with a strong willpower has a very negative will, then likewise, that could also matter. There you go, black magic story. But then in India, particularly, when I want to scare someone out, keeps annoying, and then I say, I do practice a little Tantra, and then job is done. I don't need to, do anything then. Then they are like, okay, well, I don't want to mess up with this guy. So, but then I have to be careful in the West. If I say I do Tantra, then they will understand like some massage therapy or something like that. So so it's also a cultural appropriation, and you need to know that Tantra is not like a mainstream in India. Tantra is heavily criticized and insubordinated by the Brahminic Smarta orthodoxy, the mainstream Hindu priestly orthodoxy, because many of the things the Tantra said, you could drink, you could eat meat, who cares? And then those ideas were counterintuitive to Puritanistic Brahman ideals. And then, although many of the Tantra composers themselves were Brahmins, but then the other Brahmins were completely abhorred to the idea of impurity. And so Tantrics also kind of didn't stop. They kept annoying, like when they were rejected, they wrote even more graphic stuff. So, okay, you are annoyed, I'm gonna write even more graphic stuff for you, so then you can be totally pissed. Like when you want to annoy someone, you say something and he gets annoyed, and then you say something even more crazy, and then because you want, like, if you want to get annoyed, just go to full scale. Why stop there? So it's I'm not saying there is nothing there, but there are also historical reasons and textual reasons to why those perceptions are built. But in reality, Tantra, having accepted, there are a lot of those kind of things there, but tremendous amount of knowledge we need to extract from Tantric literature that is going to be beneficial. Today is the world of recycling, and we think old ideas are useless, but we think there's old plastics and, glasses and paper, and we recycle. And we don't always come up with brand new ideas that didn't exist before. So for us to get some new ideas, there is a lot for us to recycle from old teachings in Tantra. And I'm not saying you have to take everything. So that is one orthodox view would be, if you are practicing, you have to practice everything. No, I know it is not how it goes. If you are listening to me, you don't have to listen to my every word I said, but that doesn't mean that, some people, I don't like that guy, and therefore I'm not going to listen to anything he has to say. Like sometimes we can be so hard-headed. So we have to always have a balanced, filtered process of accepting or rejecting, and it's always up to us. And so things can be good, take it. If things are not so good, don't take it.